You're welcome, our dear viewers. Of course, as usual, every Friday we have our TV show discussing important perspective of different things that are happening globally. And I want to welcome each one of you to this show. And of course, I also want to congratulate you for finishing the month of February and also starting the month of March. Of course, in February, we discussed a lot of things around aflatoxins and etc. and etc. And this new month, we're also going to deliberate on issues of consumers. And of course, you know that in the month of March, we see different international days. For instance, tomorrow we are celebrating the Women's Day, International Women's Day. And on the 15th, we always celebrate the Consumer Rights Day. So it's still a whole month of consumers. And so in this episode today, we shall be reflecting on positioning consumers for a just transition to a sustainable lifestyle. So of course, we are aware that um, the lifestyles currently are a little bit changing, and many times the lifestyles that we are having currently are not sustainable at all. So we want to dive into understanding sustainable lifestyles. What are they? How do they look like? How should they be? And then as consumers, how can we be positioned to make sure that we transit to these sustainable lifestyles? And remember that every time you're talking about sustainable lifestyles, we go back and relate these styles to the sustainable development goals, where we have to be sustainable, meaning that we should be able to do things now, but they shouldn't affect the survival of the future generations, meaning that we can sustainably use at our time, and then also those who come after us should be able to also survive without being challenged by the practices that we do. So today, we are going to welcome Miss Agnes Chirabo, the Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance. She'll be with us on this call, and she'll be sharing with us quite a lot of perspective when it comes to positioning consumers. And I know that Ms. Chirabo will be sharing more around women. How do we position our mothers, our sisters, our aunties to make sure that they're sustainable consumers, but also to make sure that their lifestyles are actually sustainable in nature. Miss Agnes, I would want you to greet our viewers, and then I'll give you an opportunity again later on to dive into the subject matter. But please say hi to our viewers.
Oh, thank you so much, Bernard, and greetings to everyone wherever you are in this new month of March, in this new month of us as consumers, but also as women. I add my voice to Bernadette to congratulate you for having completed the month of February. We do not take it for granted. And we thank God that we are in this new month of March. You know, Bernard, I always tell my viewers and listeners, all my audience, that I'm a Christian. In the Bible, there is an epistle, Paul's epistle to Titus. And in that book, he wrote, reminding Titus, his friend, that he had left Titus in a city called Crete to put in order what had remained pending. And as a Christian, I pick that message that for the fact that God has left us to live up to today, there are quite so many things that need our attention that we need to put in order. So, dear viewers, this month of March, we want to put in order all of the pending issues regarding our lifestyles as consumers and putting in order all issues regarding the women as very central actors in our development for the earth, for the planet, and the people. So, this is the month, and the fact that you're watching us, we are here for that purpose this month, me and you, and we should be fit for purpose. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Chiravo, you know that most of the Christians are fasting, but also we have the the Muslim brothers and sisters are also in their fasting period. So I think this is a time of hope and a time of reflection. How are we running away from sustainability? The same Bible that you quoted, I remember very well in Genesis, that God sent us to subdue the world so many years ago. So many years ago, actually, when you look at the current styles that we are living, I imagine if Abraham and his children and Jacob and whatever, if they lived in our time, if we could actually find anything on this planet. So, meaning that so many things that they left for us seem not to be working currently because of the styles that we are living in. So, it's a little bit a challenge, but we need to dive into that and dissect it during the course of the show. I really want that. I'm going to have a little bit of a network glitch. I am going to allow you to first dive into talking to the women about the sustainable way they can have their styles. What are the current styles of the women and our mothers, our sisters out there? What are these lifestyles that they are living, and how are they unsustainable or sustainable, and how best can we make sure that they are more sustainable? I will join you a little later to speak into the general overview, but I think since we are celebrating the Women's Day, I think that we should hinge on that first so that the women are sorted first.
No,
So,
it is
Miss
not
Agnes.
about sorting women, Ben. It's not about sorting women. It is always women first.
Yes, exactly.
It is
Exactly.
always women first. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you, Bernard, for reminding me that our brothers and sisters that subscribe to Islam are in Sahum. I am here to bring you Sahum greetings and say Ramadan Karim. And I'm also aware that the Christians, we are also in Lent. I think this is the best time in humanity. And I'm desiring to see transition, because if you're not subscribing to Christianity, it is likely that you're subscribing to Islam. And here we are on your site discussing the issues of transiting to sustainable consumption as consumers and transiting to sustainable lifestyle as humans. I also wish to speak to the men and the women out there that tomorrow, the 8th of March, we shall be celebrating the International Women's Day. That day we commemorate to recognize the role that women play in our development arena, in our ecosystem, but also in our households and in our lives. We are talking about the day where we pay particular attention, because we know that there are quite so many things that are pulling us everywhere, wherever. But here is the day we say that let us mobilize the entire world, the humans and nature, to reflect on a woman. The woman who is your mother, the woman who is your sister, the woman who is your daughter, that woman figure that is in your life. When I stop to think about, to reflect on a creature called a woman, we are talking about nothing, but we are talking about life. We are talking about multiplication. We are talking about being, because we all know who the woman is and who the woman continues to be in your life. So these are the women that we wish to commemorate and celebrate tomorrow on International Women's Day. Women's Day, both the living and those that are first going to be with our Lord. We celebrate you, women, wherever you are, because you're the mothers of not only humanity, but you're also mothers of nature. Women are at the center of nature, and therefore, putting the two subjects together, the commemoration of International Women's Day, which is also largely on sustainable lifestyle and responsible consumption, and the International Consumer Day. I'm here to bring you a piece of bad news, men and women, that we are seeing the number of women who are overweight and obese in the world, fast growing. In Uganda, last year, government released the national census report, a report that indicated a very fast rise in obesity among women. And it is quite very unfortunate that the women, as they transit from the rural areas coming into the urban areas, they become more obese. The statistics that government gave us indicated that 50%, because 99.8%, I mean 49.8% is 50% if we round off. The report indicated that 50% of all women in Kampala were found to be obese. And the figures continue as they were. But also the women in the rural areas, we are seeing the rural regions, the levels of obesity getting up above 30%. Ladies and gentlemen, obesity, the biggest cause of obesity is nothing but lifestyle. It is lifestyle. How are the women feeding right from when they were children? I know as we are going to continue discussing about transiting to responsible lifestyles in this month as consumers, we are going to design this segment to talk to particular segments of society, because when we put you all together, then we fail to deal with the real unique issues that are responsible for the kind of lifestyles that you're living. So back to the women. The women, we are getting more obese, darlings. We are getting more overweight, and this has to be interrogated, both in health, but also in terms of science, but also in terms of lifestyles. What are the women eating? What are the women eating? Especially as we transit in our agri-food systems. We see that women, many of them, surprisingly, they are developing a sweet tooth. The woman that is watching me here, and you man who is watching me here, haven't you seen your woman or the woman in your life getting attracted to sugar sweetened beverages? The women are increasingly developing the urge and appetite for fatty foods. Are you not seeing that woman in your life, or you yourself, how you have grown the appetite of fatty foods? Many of you have also competitively developed the appetite for over-processed foods, highly processed foods. Is it not what you're eating? Is it not what you've had for breakfast? Is it what you're not planning to have for lunch if you've not had lunch yet? Isn't it what you had for dinner last night? So women, we are here to say, can we start from the time you're watching this segment to transit in your food and eating lifestyle? What kind of work are we doing? That's another aspect of lifestyle. Women, what kind of work are we doing? And is it the kind of work that is allowing us to exercise actively and passively? We know that we are in a world that is highly getting mechanized. We have mechanized the household chores, which is a very good transition. But while we took up the technological transition, what happened? Because women weren't obese, women weren't overweight. It is because we were working, we were doing our household chores, and there were many. I'm not saying that we should continue doing them, but maybe as we are having discussions of transiting, maybe it is something that we need to reflect on. As we usher in technologies to help us in these household chores, which is a very good thing in terms of our time management and in terms of how we are offering our labor. What impact has it got on our lifestyle? As many of us are hiring households, which is a very good thing to lessen the burden our ancestral women carried, it's a transition issue. Then how did that transit our lifestyle, and how is it reflecting on our body weight and our body mass? These are all aspects of lifestyles that as women we need to reflect on. I know we transited, which is a very good thing, and we need to clap for ourselves. We transited. Many of us have bought vehicles, or our spouses are driving us. We are no longer, many of us, walking miles to go and collect water, which is a very good thing, and we continue to advocate. We are no longer walking miles in search for fuel. Everything is getting centralized near around us. It is a transition in a lifestyle. But what does it mean to our health as women? So as we transited and liberated all that time, what are we using the extra time that comes by our side? Are we using that extra time to hold the TV remote while we are sipping our sugar sweetened beverage and snacking on a candy or something like that, or a highly salty snack? What are we using the time that we liberated and transited and replaced it with the technology, and we replaced it with households, and we replaced it with not walking miles in search for water and searching for wood fuel, and walking miles to the market, because now we are driving to the market, which is a good thing. But then the time that we liberated, how are we using it? So as we are embracing these transitions, I think we are here to call upon both men and women to reflect as well on our own lifestyle. By the way, technology is a lifestyle. Doing everything by tech is a lifestyle. But then as you liberate time and your labor and your energy, what else are you constructively using that labor for? These are reflections that we must have in this month of consumers, in this month of women. Now, let me talk to the women as mothers of the planet. Women as mothers of the planet. How are we disposing waste, women? How are we talking about Mother Nature? Are we still transiting in love and consciousness and responsibility for nature, just as our ancestral mothers and grandmothers used to do? Because why women, nature, and the planet is called Mother Planet, its importance is as the importance of the humans that we bring on this earth. So women, as we give life to children, to the new generation of humanity, where are we expecting to put this new life, which is Mother Planet, which is Mother Nature? As we transited from using nature-based practices, practicing under exercising nature-based practices. And we transited. What did we again embrace? Women in the urban areas in Africa. In my own cultural tradition, we used to prepare food in a nature-based practices. The staple is prepared using banana leaves. The sauce used to be prepared using banana leaves. We call it luombo. We used to do all of these things. We transited, which is a very good thing. Maybe, maybe not. I know there are even fellow women that transited to wrong practices, from good to wrong. They are using polythene bags. Where I'm broadcasting from, it is called Kavera. So they transited from banana leaves to polythene papers in preparation for food. So what kind of transition as a mother of nature did you take? What are you planting in your compound? Are you that kind of woman in this year as we are celebrating Women's Day and Consumers Day in March? Are you that kind of woman that have asked your spouse to tarmac, to pave the entire compound? Are you that kind of woman that dumps waste everywhere you find? Are you that kind of woman who is dumping sanitary everywhere you wish to be? Are you that kind of woman that is mismanaging your child's diapers, pampers, that take hundreds of years to decompose? So as a woman, how then do we transit to responsible lifestyles in terms of how we live our own lives, what we eat, how we prepare it, where we eat from, how we work, how we use nature, how we use planet? If we do not, if we are transiting from right to wrong, that is not the right transition. We are calling out the world this time around as we are celebrating International Women's Day. I wish also to speak about this, that women, we are the agents of transfer of knowledge. So if we are talking about transiting to responsible lifestyles, what kind of knowledge are you transferring to the generation that is behind you? What kind of knowledge are you transferring to your children? When you sit with your children in practice and in word, what do you exactly tell your children? Both boy children and girl children. What kind of conversation are you having as a family, a woman, the center of the household? What kind of roles, what kind of tasks are you giving to your children, to the people under your roof? Because lifestyle is a daily kind of practice. This is a challenge that you and me and you must carry on our shoulder the whole of this month and going beyond. So this is the kind of reflection that we want us to have in this month of March. How we live our lifestyle, and the implication, I think, is what I need to conclude with. Ladies and gentlemen, our viewers, When we become overweight and obese, 5 in every 10 women in Kampala being obese, it means, ladies and gentlemen, we are having of non-communicable disease. No wonder hypertension is also on the rise. Diabetes is on the rise. Cancers are on the rise. Heart complications beyond hypertensions are also on the rise. So, mothers, as we celebrate International Women's Day, let us transit for the purposes of becoming real mothers of the people and the planet, but also let us transit in giving responsible and best practices to the generations that are coming behind us. I think I can leave it here, Bernard.
Thank you so much, Miss Agnes. Many times when you speak now, I start thinking why we've not been discussing this subject now every day. I think it's a daily thing that we need to be talking about, because I was reflecting on the current lifestyles of our mothers. Then I was wondering if
Yes,
we can do a study looking at the house helps and their bosses. Who is more best than the other? Because I'm now realizing that the household chores that were being done by mothers have been shifted to the other mothers who are still young, or in the name of maids or housemaids or whatever. So I think that the mothers have, first of all, consuming a lot of fat, a lot of sugar, and yet they're not burning it during the course of working.
yes.
And so the house helps are doing the reverse. Probably they're not even eating on those funny foods and whatever by their bosses,
The
but
candies
actually
and the beverages.
yes, but they're spending more energy when it comes to doing household work. They're the ones busy washing and whatever. And then I reflected backwards and I looked at my mother. If it was time for immunization, she would carry us, her children, and take us to the hospital by herself, walking there, carrying us at the back, 2 to 3 kilometers away from home. And then I'm wondering whether this kind of walking is still happening around the urban areas where we are reporting a 50% of women who are obese.
Te-
And then I get back and I
Tell
ask
us,
myself, now, I've not
is
seen,
your wife
and
walking?
well, I think it's a whole lifestyle, because I'm also thinking that, well, during the course of that time, someone goes to the market to buy food and you walk there. The market is really, people walk to the market and buy food. Currently, it's a phone call to some guy at the stage and they bring the food. So there's nothing really that is happening. So it's really lifestyle that you can decide a border person to buy for you food and bring it home. Whichever choice they
Hmm.
make, go with, this kind of living. And then we have also seen that parents used to take their children to school. For instance, in the morning, a parent would actually carry their child to the school and then they are sure the child has entered school. And currently, we see 5 children on a border from a household. There is this common guy who has to drop them to school. Those are all unsustainable, because it means that these children, first of all, they don't recognize that parents are supposed to take them to school. Secondly, we are putting these children at risk of being on a border, 5 of them, no helmets and nothing on. And whichever speed this guy will take them on, that is none of your business. And that's how the children grow, knowing that, hey, I think this is how it's supposed to be done. So the issue of childcare seems to be going away as one of the methods that would put our parents to task of ensuring that they are walking to school, they are going even for PTA meetings and walking there actually. So there is minimal walking. So you would actually expect that people will actually get malnourished in the form of overnutrition. And so you'll also expect that the non-communicable diseases will keep on increasing, because we are eating much and we are utilizing less. So all those are risks. And now when I look at women, I got very shocked, because I kept on remembering how this has been evolving over the years. We know women as the chief producers of food. So there is this word I usually don't want to mention, smallholder farmer. The smallholder farmers, majority of them are actually women. almost 80% or so are women who are feeding the world. But surprisingly, with the transition that you've been talking about, many people have gone away from production of food using our, what people call rudimentary. I don't know why they call it rudimentary, but our normal methods of production of food. And now we're going into massive utilization of pesticides, of fungicides, of chemicals, etc., in the production of food. Now, just imagine this woman, she's pregnant and she's spraying a highly hazardous pesticide on beans. Can you imagine? I'd never seen beans being sprayed. I just got shocked the other day when I found women spraying potatoes, beans, soy. This was not heard of. But it's a transition that we're actually taking, and yet it is actually taking away the sustainability bit that we had. If you look at the current soils, just maybe about 20 years ago when the chemicals were rampant, we see that the soil that has been fertile for over 1 million or so years has already lost value. So the sustainability we are talking about is that in the next 5, 10, 20 or so years, we may not even be in position to produce anything on the soil that fed our grandies for 100 or thousands of years. So the sustainability bit seems to be running away in the name of transitioning to what works very fast. There is one entity in this in Uganda called slow food. I always love it. That food must be slow cooking, slow growing, slow everything. But when you look at the fast, the so-called fast, I don't know how to call it. Maybe we have to come up with an organization called fast food. That everything is too
No, the
fast.
fast foods are there.
Yeah. So there is a lot of fast production, fast cooking, fast eating, fast everything, and those lifestyles tend to actually affect the livelihoods of the people. They tend to affect the way we think, the way we reason, the way we plan, the way we do things. And at the end of the day, we are going to have children who learn from what their elders are doing, and so the sustainability bit is dead. If you just look at how, I always tell women anyway, that when you get married, there's a likelihood that what you're going to prepare at your place, at your home now that you have a family, is likely to be what your mother has been training you on from home, from your home. So just imagine moving to a family, you're going to start up a family, but where you're coming from, everything has been unsustainable. There's a lot of junk, there's a lot of fast food, there's a lot of not exercising, there's a lot of laziness, there's everything not sustainable. How do you expect now to groom your children to be more sustainable? So there is a very big disconnect now between the next generation and the current generation. And now that is what we're talking about when you're talking about sustainability, that you should be able to meet your needs, your demands now in this generation of ours, without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own demands. Now, when you look at the process that we are trying to narrate here, the sustainability, the fact that the future generation is coming, we are not even sure whether the generation can even take quarter of its years with anything, because there is a risk that we're going to be very unsustainable if we don't change from what we are calling transitioning. So we need to transit, but what practices are we transitioning with should be a question of concern. If you look at currently the way we are handling water sources, in Kampala, you know very well that when people have gone to the loos, the washrooms and whatever, in the night, people are actually emptying washrooms into drainage channels. And at the end of the day, the channels are emitting this water, rather this waste, into the water bodies. And remember, these are water bodies that have been feeding masses for thousands of years. And currently, you see that you can go to fish and you're not able to get quality fish, just because of the waste accumulation, the silt in the lakes and the rivers, etc. When we see encroachment, many of us are encroaching on every resource. We see people coming up in game reserves, in forest reserves, people constructing mansions there. We see people coming up with structures in swamps. All these are very unsustainable practices that actually, if they were done 50 years ago, we are likely that even Kampala wouldn't be here as we speak. Now that for us, we've decided to transit in that way, taking on the wrong practices in transition, we are likely to lose it. So it's now time to think about As the consumers who are being affected by the bad transitioning practices, how do we position ourselves to have a just transition? How just are we to the mother environment that is actually taking care of us? If you look at currently the diseases we are talking about that are common, we are talking about cancers. If you know that partly the air we are breathing in could be a risk factor to the cancers that people are suffering from because of this unsustainable practices that we are doing. A lot of emissions, a lot of waste being pumped in the air, a lot of unreasonable kind of waste management practices that we have. So at the end of the day, these wrong practices we're doing are actually not affecting anybody else except us who are consuming the air, the water, the food, etc. So the moment we start forgetting that all of us are consumers, that is the starting point of failure. That is the starting point of death. There are regulators who have refused to do what they're supposed to do in regulating some of these things. For instance, the pesticides. We have a team that is supposed to be regulating the pesticides that are supposed to be coming in the country. And because of greed and corruption and other things, they have not done that. Now they forget that actually, while they're in their offices, they are regulators. But as soon as they get into a restaurant, as soon as they reach into their homes, as soon as they get on the street, they are going to feed on food that is prepared or that was grown using the chemicals that they refused to actually regulate. So at the end of the day, all of us become consumers. So if we do not look at ourselves as consumers and we start doing things without the caution of being a consumer at one point of the chain, then we're going to have a challenge. We're going to cause trouble to ourselves, but also to the people that we are leading. I want to assure you that all, if not most of the consumers are willing even to buy sustainable products. But the challenge that we've been getting as consumers is the issue of misinformation. A lot of misinformation out there. A lot of misinformation. People are being disinformed. For instance, you look at the adverts that are running. You look at a TV and they are running an advert. When you reflect on that advert, first of all, it has no meaning apart from misleading the persons. I've been seeing an advert where you have to be in the car, but when the big truck comes to smash it, you just enter it and pick is it a bottle of some soda, and you'll be sorted. Now, look at that kind of advert. Someone tells you that when you eat this food, you grow in 2 minutes. So our consumers are willing to actually take on sustainable products, but the challenge has been misinformation and disinformation. But also, we have entities that are responsible for regulating information. Unfortunately, they seem to be a little bit not doing what they're supposed to do. And at the end of the day, a lot of misinformation comes out and consumers consume it. When they consume it, they land into trouble. We have seen all these products on the market being advertised, but we know that they're either counterfeit or fake products and they're still on the market. So the question would be now, why are we promoting what is actually killing society instead of promoting what can actually save the society? So these unjust transitions we keep talking about, actually taking away the realities of sustainable lifestyles, taking away the realities of how someone could live for 100 or 100 ago. They're taking away the realities of families, the realities of communities, the realities of leadership, the realities of governance, and other things. So with the transitioning, we need to think about everything around us: the food system, the environment, the water we are taking in, the air we are breathing in, and the practices that are actually leading us into disease, etc. I have also seen that most of our people are actually getting sick, but the sicknesses that we have are all preventable if we went into sustainable practices. For instance, if we avoid misuse or overusing of highly hazardous pesticides, we can cut off on cancers, meaning that we can go back to agroecology, people start practicing agroecological practices, people go into organic farming, that can minimize the usage of highly hazardous pesticides and that can save people from a cancer. So you see that transition that is sustainable can even prevent us from disease. If people go back to physical activity, which many we realize that we can actually overcome non-communicable diseases, almost all of them, if we just go back to our normal practices of cookery, where we're not using paraffin to preserve our food, where we're not using antibiotics to preserve our food, where we're not using transformer oil in cookery, where we're not using engine oil in cookery. When we transit from those wrong practices, our people can actually live beyond the expected time that one would think they have to live. Just imagine if all of us uh, took action, making sure that no one is constructing in the swamp, making sure no one is depositing effluent in water, making sure that our air is clean, and we are all concerned and we are all fighting for that. I'm telling you that all airborne diseases, all waterborne diseases would be cut off. All foodborne diseases would be cut off. So who would be getting sick? And if people are not getting sick, it means that they can live longer and contribute even sustainably to the future that is actually coming our way. So all of these must not be neglected. If the regulators, for instance, would say, we don't want vehicles that are DMCs because they are emitting a lot of waste, a lot of smoke that goes to the ozone, destroy the air and whatever, and those are actually adhered to, it would mean that we would have minimal emissions, and that would mean that people would live longer, would have quality air, and people can survive longer. So all that is more sustainable than actually thinking about these small things because of greed, because of unseriousness, because of corruption, and people end up actually causing disease or ill health to the communities. So there are quite a number of things that we need to think about. A lot of things we need to reflect. How sustainable are our lives going to be now and in the future? What are we doing right that we can push to the future? But I think also the other challenge has been we do not know how to copy from the previous generations. What did they do that kept this earth the way we found it? And why is it that we want to leave it even worse than we found it? I think it would be very bad that we contribute to, having a population that cannot sustain itself in the next few years. So I think that if you look at now again the environmental perspective, who is deforesting? If this person deforesting is a consumer, do they understand why they are deforesting, and do they understand the risk that they are causing to the population when they deforest? And if that is the case, do they understand the reason why we need to plant more trees? Do we understand why we need to do more recreation of our environment than actually diminishing it away? Are they aware of the agricultural practices that can actually be sustainable? Are our consumers even aware that there is trouble coming in the next 10 years if we don't do particular things? So I think there is also a capacity issue, there is a knowledge issue, an awareness gap that we need to fill in as civil society, as government, as religious leaders, as cultural institutions. What is it that we can do to transit these consumers of ours into a just and sustainable lifestyle? And I think if we don't do that, then we shall continue doing our usual juakali, and then we keep leaving people behind, and then we end up in disease mode, we end up in death, people keep dying every now and then, we end up in disabilities because of the accidents that are happening every single day, we end up in a total mess of the planet. So I think that as we go into discussing sustainable transitioning, we need to think about all those, and we are able to move forward. So Madam Agnes, I was trying to really add on what you were trying to tell us, but I want you also now to a little bit tell us about legislation when it comes to transitioning to sustainable lifestyle. What would be the role of government or legislators or regulators in this whole discussion? So I think you could build on
Yes.
that and tell us more about that.
No, you see, it is also very interesting listening to you, Bernard.
Yes.
It's very interesting listening to you. But you see, one of the things that Humanity TV Africa is doing and should continue doing is letting the world know that the people in Africa lived in an organized society, a society that had rules and regulations, do's and don'ts. We had our own legal policy and institutional regime that provided governance. And for me, this is what I need to dwell on as Africa. You asked a question that why do people thought that the manner in which the people of Africa produce food is rudimentary. I'm here to tell you and to tell the viewers that actually people in Africa transited on wrong information because we were stigmatized. Our lifestyle, our African lifestyle was called devoic, was called satanic, was old barbaric, was called old fashioned, and we were not given an opportunity as people of Africa to evaluate and naturally evolve. But that does not also suggest that African societies were not evolving. We were evolving, but we had our own way of doing things. We had a governance system, but all our systems were misinformed, just like you have said, and we discarded them away. So for me, Bernard, I'm not going to look into the Muzungu laws and regulations. Please bear with me on this segment. I'm not going to dwell on that today because we imported laws. We even imported the practice of writing laws. We even imported in that importation a package of appointing leaders, which was not within our governance system as the people of Africa. We had leaders, but we could not import leaders. We could not import law. We could not import policy. Policy was lived. Law was lived. Leadership was groomed naturally. And we had a better society in Africa. We had rules. Bernard, I'm very sure when you were growing up with your grandmother, there were rules in your home. There were policies in your home. There were policies in your society. There were policies within your ethnic group. They were not written anywhere. But they moved from generation to generation, generation to generation. And it is now that we are reflecting that some of the practices that were as a result of policy in African society, we are now saying, wait a minute. This issue of life, of household chores, it was a burden on women, true, but it was giving women an opportunity to exercise. Now the people that came and gave us a single-sided piece of message are now leaving us with ugly statistics of obesity and overweight and associated non-communicable diseases. So I'm here to mobilize the people of Africa, the humans, that within our human nature, within our social environment, we had rules, we had regulations, we had ways and lifestyles, and they had rules, do's and don'ts. Can we reflect on them before we look for this law that was imported, for this institution that was imported, for these governors that were imported? Bernard, they are important. And I agree to that they are very important. But they are too weak in capacity to reach everybody's household. What do you want the court? What do you want the law of government to do in your bedroom? Does it have capacity?
Madam Agnes, first pause there. Now I wanted to ask also this. How best can we bring back that law of ours? Because for me, in my community, I know that every time in my small trading center, where I come from, there was no throwing garbage. That was criminal. Everybody who had a shop in my village, it was mandatory that before people go home, they clean that trading center and everybody's waste is put at their doorstep, and they had a common place, and that was it. That was it. So
And
somehow
that was it.
I am
It was not written. So, Bernard, I think, and viewers, this is a personal
okay. I think I just had a little bit of an internet glitch. I don't know whether Miss Agnes is still also having proper internet. Okay, I think also she has lost some bit of connectivity. But I think that the discourse is really around that how do we promote back our practices that were very good and that were actually achieving what we had over the years. So without going back and forth, without losing focus, what are the good practices that we can transit with? How do we keep our water sources clean? How do we keep our air and air quality clean? How do we ensure that the environment we're living in is actually sound? How do we make sure that we do physical activity or some bit of exercises here and there? How do we get back to our food that we used to eat, our healthy and nutritious food? How do we get back to those kind of practices that actually build us, other than co-opting practices that are actually, uh, first of all, they're not context based, but we're just borrowing them from one place to another, bring them to ourselves. And at the end of the day, they lead us into disease, into non-communicable diseases, into other challenges that we are facing currently. So this is how we are trying to transition. How do we make sure that the transition we are undergoing is actually just and fair for all consumers? How do we make sure that we are able to borrow from our elders, our older generations? How do we get their practices that they did that kept them for long, that sustained the environment, that sustained our land, that sustained our air? And then we copy those and bring them on board. We can improve them, even make them better to be more sustainable for the generation that is actually coming in the near future. So I think it's an issue of self-reflection as consumers, as entities, as governments, as cultural institutions, as education systems. The other issue would be that, okay, how do we encourage our children to start picking up sustainable lifestyles? Maybe how do we incorporate this kind of, sustainability aspects in curricula of schools? If the schools, that's where most of our children are spending more time than at home. So how do we make sure that sustainable development, sustainability issues, lifestyle are actually incorporated in the school discussions, in the curriculum, maybe at primary school or secondary schools, or even at higher levels of learning? So we need to think about it as entities that are regulating things. How do we ensure that we do our role to regulate? How do we regulate things? For instance, if you're in Ministry of Agriculture, how do we regulate the unsustainable means of production of food? How do we regulate pesticides? How do we regulate chemicals? How do we regulate, seed because most of the times people are buying inputs that are actually counterfeit or fake. How do we regulate that? What about the food products on the market? We have so many standards as a country. How are we managing those standards? How are we executing the standards? How is UNBS supporting to make sure that all our products are actually meeting the standards? This should be the conversation out there. And also thinking that, okay, if I'm a regulator of trade, how do I ensure that whatever is coming on market for consumers to consume are actually safe for them? How do we make sure that counterfeit, fake products, and other products that are supposed to be on the market are actually not on the market? So if for instance, you have local government, how are you ensuring that your local governments or lower local governments, sub-counties and whatever, people are empowered to be able to take on the mantle to sustainable lifestyles? If you're at community level, maybe you're a parish chief or maybe you're a government official in a particular community, how are you ensuring that you're empowering consumers to be able to have sustainable lifestyles? So this is the discussion we need to think about. At household level, how do we ensure that our children and the people we live with in our homes are able to understand the issues around sustainability? How are they able to take on lifestyles that are more sustainable? How do we start grooming these children to understand sustainability and to be able to have sustainable means of food production, of consumption, of everything that we're doing? How are these children groomed to make sure that they understand the issues around sustainability? If it is maybe a communal kind of engagement, how are we engaging communities out there to make sure that we sensitize them, we build their capacity, we empower them in areas of sustainable living, sustainable lifestyles, sustainable housing, sustainable feeding, sustainable production of food, everything? How do we ensure that we bring on board everybody without leaving out anybody behind? So I think that regulators of media, how do we deal with the media to make sure that whatever is coming out through the media is actually safe for consumption by the different consumers? How do we segment the different aspects of communication? How do we segment the different advertisement that, hey, this is maybe good for children, the other one is not good for children? How do we bring that, and how do we regulate it if we are regulators? If we are still regulators or maybe legislators, how do we bring on board laws that are enforceable in our context? The laws that can actually fit within our context, that actually can even be executed. The problem is developing many laws because they are out of context and they cannot be executed. So the issue here would be, how do we bring on board the laws, the policies, the regulations, the guidelines that are context specific to Africa or to Uganda that can actually be enforced? And how do we build capacity of the enforcers? How do we build them to make sure that they are able to actually enforce? How do we facilitate this enforcement? How much budgets do we allocate for enforcement of such things? And so all that, when consolidated, when put together, we can achieve more, we can be more sustainable, and our people can be live in sustainable lifestyles. But also that would mean that once people are more sustainable, people can have long life, we can have minimal disease occurrences or prevalences, and so government will even spend less in treating disease, in treating crime, etc. So I think this is a snapshot of what we shall be discussing about during the course of this month. As we commemorate consumers, we shall be looking at the different aspects of consumerism. We shall be looking at different aspects to do with how we support consumers to actually reach where we want them to be, or how they can make healthier choices during the course of their life. So basically that is it, and I want to thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for paying attention and for listening in. I want to appreciate, of course, Miss Chirabo for sacrificing her time to be with us during the course of this show. I also want to say that Mr. Chimera Henry is with us today in spirit. He's traveling, shifting from one airport to another, so he wasn't able to join us. And of course, the Humanist TV Africa, we are very honored for the opportunity you've always given to us every Friday. And Bongole in the studios, thank you so much for producing all this content that we are sharing out there. And of course, to all our viewers, we thank you for taking time to listen in. And we catch up again next week on Friday, same time and same hour, same channel. We shall be able to build further where we've stopped today. So we'll catch up again, and happy weekend. for those who will have a weekend. Of course, sorry for those who lost their dear ones during the course of the we wish you the very best of the week, the weekend, and also we catch up again next week on Friday, same time, same channel. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.